Well, good morning. Just waiting a minute or so for everybody to arrive. I'm starting this a little early. Good morning, good morning. So let's get started. My name is Matthew Stibber, and today I'm going to be talking about HubSpot AI tools, things that we now think are ready for prime time, some of the advanced AI functionality that we're using in HubSpot, and some potential rules of the road and guidance about how to get the most out of those tools. Or perhaps to avoid screwing up using them is another way of putting it. Minimize risk, that's the polite way of saying it. We've been a HubSpot partner for a decade or more. We've done 150 plus HubSpot consultancy projects. I am a complete AI geek now. I'm having AI epiphanies on a regular basis, and I've gone from being optimistic and excited but wary of deploying it in the real world this year to being embedding AI into our practice, our working practices at Articulate, the work we do for clients, and thinking about it. So, and just to illustrate that point, in a geeky sort of way, I generated this image. I quite like this album by Jacques Dutronc from the 60s, his French singer, and he has this sort of foreshortened image on the front cover, and he must have done it with sort of wide angle lenses and step ladders and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I was going to recreate all of that, right? I was actually going to set it up in the garden and take pictures and all this stuff, and I was trying to work out how to do it. And then I thought, yeah, why don't I just save myself some time and get AI to do it? So I had Claude Opus 5 analyze the album cover and sort of describe the effect. Then I took that into Google Gemini, which has quite a nice image generator, uploaded a bunch of pictures of me and said, make me look like that album cover. And rather delightfully, it captured my abundant hairline and my beer drinker's paunch very well, neither of which are present in the original. So this is the point I'm getting at is, apart from the sort of geeky joy of all of this, actually working intelligently with AI can be not just time saving or labor saving or efficient. It can be joyful. It can be a creative act in its own right. And I was talking to a friend of mine who is a BAFTA award-winning creator of video idents and things for sporting events and TV. Well, he and his company. And they've just generated their first AI created ident. And it was still a creative thing. It took the genius and experience and the taste and talent of that whole team to do it. Anyway, so that's where I'm coming from. So let's start with how you can use HubSpot AI strategically rather than just as a sort of lazy prompting, uncreative, or what Blair Enns calls misautomation. And I think the question that you should start with is, if HubSpot AI could do one part of your job for you right now, which part would you actually hand over? What takes the most time? What is the most highest priority thing in your portfolio? What's the most creatively interesting question? And quite often I'm finding with AI deployments, the higher the level of ambition, the more satisfying the answer can be. Sometimes you have to then spend quite a lot of time realizing that answer and getting to it. Our motto at Articulate, and I think this is a really important starting point, is AI makes us better, not cheaper, right? And you might translate that to your context into AI makes us better, not faster. What we want to use AI for is to actually elevate the work. And I think an important understanding of AI in a HubSpot universe is that HubSpot has an enormous amount of context about the things that it is doing that are absent when you are just looking at a blank prompt in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever your AI of choice is. It has CRM records, it has conversation minutes, typically meeting notes, it has campaign activity, it has sales results, it has all that stuff. And the more context it has to work with, the more valuable the AI output can be, whether it's prospecting or researching or creating content or supporting customers or providing reporting analysis. And I think this is the key thing. What can you do in HubSpot with AI that uses that context really well? So I'm going to talk about 5 HubSpot native AI tools, and because I'm a chatterbox, I've also got 3 more advanced use cases where HubSpot is part of the mix, and these are based on things that we've been doing for clients recently. So the first thing is removing the preparation tax. If you're preparing for client meetings or sales meetings or pretty much anything, HubSpot has the history, the emails, the conversation, the context, the deals, the tickets, whatever about that, so that you can ask HubSpot to prepare for a demo call, for a meeting, and it can use that context to make that preparation really more valuable. So it's not an oracle. I mean, it's not like going to tell you stuff that it can't know, and it shouldn't guess, but it's a kind of capable research assistant or capable junior assistant that's just going to save you 10 or 15 minutes per meeting. I'll talk a little bit about how we take this concept a little bit further towards the end in my bonus material. But I find what it also allows us to do is to elevate the quality of those meetings in several ways. For example, it means that I can come into a meeting and not spend time establishing context or questioning things that I might have forgotten, but the AI hasn't forgotten or won't forget. It also can consolidate information from different sources to generate better questions or discussion points. Obviously, as with all of these things, we're going to recommend that, and this is an important guardrail principle, you keep your hands on the steering wheel. So you look at what it produces. It's a preparation assistant. It's not rock up for the meeting and look at the Claude notes or the AI notes for the first time. So Breeze Assistant is great for doing that, particularly in a sales context. Second tool for Content Hub users is Content Remix, and we've been a little bit wary about this, and I think our view is that the tool is improving, and for some use cases it's probably ready for prime time now. What I think it's most useful for is where you have work that is genuinely human, expert, authoritative, based on real experience. So for example, a webinar recording or an interview or something like that, or some combination of those things, customer interviews. And maybe you are writing, or you have written a case study or a blog article or a report, or you've got a webinar, and then you want to say to HubSpot, look, I've got this thing. Can you create a landing page out of it? Can you create a series of social media posts out of it? Can you create adverts to promote it? And it will go and take that and use that to create all those other assets. And again, don't just put it in autopilot and accept its output unreviewed. Keep your hands on the steering wheel. The metaphor we use is, Gordon Ramsay has a brigade in his restaurants that are making the food, but he's standing at the pass looking at every plate before it goes out to customers to make sure it meets his standards. And indeed, that's, I think, increasingly part of the value that we provide at Articulate, is that review at the pass of the work, of human oversight and the programming and development. The other thing that's really, really critical is the quality of the source. And I've talked about source material, but also in HubSpot, there is a bunch of tools around embedding your verbal brand and your competitive positioning and so on into HubSpot, so that it can do this kind of thing, not from a blank prompt model, but from a very well-informed context. Now, again, at Articulate, we don't use this for our own work and for the work we do for clients. We do use, I would say, a much more sophisticated and much more curated system to assist, edit, brainstorm our work. But conceptually, this can do this at a sort of lighter level. And for some marketing teams, this may be really, a force multiplier. Next thing is Customer Agent. This is putting AI-style chat into a chatbot on your website, so it can answer support questions, or in a marketing and sales context, it can ask answer questions about product information or pricing, or questions about, can this thing do this, and can you support that, and do you integrate with this? And very often, people are happier now increasingly to interact with a effective chatbot than they are picking up the phone or waiting for a long time to get an email answer or something like that. So it can really accelerate the marketing sales funnel. It can really reduce the amount of sort of human labor involved in giving support, providing two things are true. One, it has a corpus of knowledge that is accurate and robust and up to date. So if your website, and this is probably true of about 3/4 of the websites that we encounter, is not an accurate reflection of what you are, what you do, and who you are, and your FAQ library, your support library, is a little bit out of date or incomplete, or it relies on knowledge that's in your support teams, CSR's heads, or you haven't got up-to-date service descriptions or pricing or whatever, it's going to give janky answers. And that's the worst thing, because you give hallucinatory or janky answers to people in a chatbot, people are just thinking, well, this is BS, or it sets you up for failure. It gives a price that then you can't honor or something like that. So again, context is key. And the model that we have at Articulate, I've talked about keeping your hands on the wheel. We also talk about setting the destination and building the engine. And you've really got to think about what is the thing that we're trying to do with this bot. And then you've got to think about what information do we have to provide. So set the destination, build the engine with the right information, and then keep your hands on the wheel by reviewing the kinds of interactions people have and fine-tuning it. Almost nothing in the world of HubSpot and AI generally is click this button and AI is going to solve your problem, right? And if you're thinking that, that's a mistaken view. And interestingly, McKinsey published a report quite recently that said a lot of the promised savings and efficiency gains of AI have been lost to the fact that people have spent a lot of time building tools and figuring out how to do them. And the whole thing is so fast moving that what you learn this year becomes redundant next year. And I think that, by the way, is one argument for building on HubSpot, because typically you are using knowledge, you're incrementally using knowledge that you already have about, for example, workflows or data structures or contact records or whatever. So that as you invest more time in it, having it in one platform makes it more and more easy to use. And you then let HubSpot carry you by introducing version 2 of Content Remix, and you're kind of, okay, great, thank you, you just made my life better, without having to learn and implement and deploy a whole new thing. The other thing that has to be true for customer agent, support agent to work well is how you define and plan the human handoffs and where those interfaces are. Do you send people to a human chat? Do you staff that in the traditional way? Do you send people to email? Do you send them to website pages? Do you stop the conversation? How do you do that? HubSpot's got quite a lot of tools and rules about how to do it, and you can be quite conservative about that, but getting the handoffs right is really important. So good sources, careful handoff management are critical for this. Okay, as an experiment, we would suggest trying this on maybe one page of the site, one product area, or tuning the different agents to different product sets. So maybe you have, for one audience, this customer agent, for another audience, that customer agent, and you embed those on the different audience pages, for example. So you can be quite granular about where these conversations appear, and you can tune them. Okay, next thing, again, something that historically we've been quite wary of and is increasingly better, is prospecting agent. And a couple of things that have happened even in this year that have made this more interesting is the ability of HubSpot to integrate prospecting agent with tools like Apollo to identify potential prospects. So it's sort of bring your own prospecting database is a really cool thing. And the ability to, the whole engine's got a lot better. But you can also just review the messages before they get sent out if you want, before you sort of switch it into full-on sort of autopilot mode. And so it now sort of joins up Where are we getting prospects from? How are we engaging them and managing that? And you can have different plays, different engagement types with people. And it's not intended to remove a salesperson. You can also have these things, these plays include human calls and tasks and connections. But it's about reducing the amount of manual labor a salesperson has to do to research and engage with people. And I think the answer here is not about volume, it's about quality, it's about doing better, not faster or cheaper. And I think if people use this, and I'm sure people will do, and you will probably have all received these sort of mass-produced spammy AI emails, if you mis-automate it and you don't have that human touch, it can go badly wrong, I think. So you need to, again, set the context right. You need to get the brand values and brand settings inside HubSpot right. You need to construct your prospecting agent plays correctly. You need to be targeting the contacts that you want to prospect carefully. And here's an interesting observational data point from us. We have identified that when we follow up with people who sign up for a webinar or download a report or something, and even if we're using a sort of a template or a sort of like a slightly automated approach, if we personalize them as we go and we do something like connect on LinkedIn with a personal message, as well as just enrolling in a sequence or an automated engagement, the response rate and the engagement rate goes up considerably. So what we're trying to do is use this kind of tooling to target better, engage better, add the human element, and by freeing up a little bit of time from kind of writing a lot of emails manually to being able to sort of identify, prospect, and engage with some automation, we're actually able to embed that human contact a little bit more promiscuously across our engagements. And I think that's a really attractive way of doing it. In a weird way, AI is allowing us to be more human. The fifth thing that I want to touch on in the sort of core set of HubSpot AI agents, and there are many more, and there are more in the pipeline, and it's, you know, HubSpot has absolutely committed itself to being a sort of an agentic AI platform. The fifth one that I want to touch on today before I get onto some special use cases is Data Agent. And I think this is really interesting. It started with life with the ability to smart properties. So you can run a little AI prompt to fill a structured data property like, yeah, what sector is this company in? Go look at their website and tell me if it's a health tech company, for example, and then select from a drop-down list the type of company it is. This is getting more and more sophisticated, and it's distinct from Breeze Intelligence, which is enriching contacts from a known database of the old Clearbit data. This is actually using AI and embedding it to create structured data using AI at scale in the CRM database. And you can embed this into workflows so you can enrich specific fields for specific companies. We'll talk about the use of credits and costs for this in a minute, but all of these things have some cost implications. But if you're saving yourself or your intern or whoever's doing the data quality or data enrichment, 2 days of work by, populating the 500 SQL prospects you have in your database and enriching their data by looking at their website, looking at their LinkedIn profiles, that's valuable. You're working smarter, you're generating better engagement, better information, and you're using AI to do that. Okay. So let's come on to some advanced use cases. Well, I think they're advanced. You may be miles ahead. Other people, your mileage may vary. The first one is at conversation intelligence, and a lot of people have been using things like Fireflies and Notion meeting notes and things like that. So this is not unique to HubSpot, but what I've found is instead of paying for some other tool, I've got this inside HubSpot, and it just because we're living in that ecosystem where we're setting meetings and booking appointments and it's connected into our email and so on. HubSpot's AI note taker just turns up to all my meetings now. So I'm not thinking about, do I have to invite them? I'm not got another tool set, another GDPR exposure and things like that. It's just in HubSpot. So HubSpot's recording the meeting. It generates its own notes and analysis. And for many people, that might be enough and might be useful. the fact that it's recording and transcribing all these meetings is valuable to me. I'll tell you why on the next slide. But it can also do things like looking at all a particular salesperson's calls and giving coaching notes. So, or analyzing who's talking too much in meetings, usually me. And that's all very valuable as well, I think, in the sense of getting feedback at scale. So sometimes the challenge with a lot of this is just how do I know the information is there, but I can't afford somebody to be listening in on every call and a high-powered sales coach to be giving my BDRs coaching. But HubSpot can do that at scale and with the AI. My particular use case, or our use case, is a little bit more sophisticated than that, I think. So we live in Claude. So we have a Claude project with a bunch of skills and knowledge about our sales process. So we're embedding things like our target ICP, our target personas, our sales strategy, our service information, the MEDDPICC qualification framework, the Blair Enns 4 conversation model that we use. All of this stuff is embedded a series of project instructions and skills, and it's quite a body of knowledge. Context is everything, people. And then we've got Claude connected via the MCP interface to HubSpot. So it's got access to read and write access to all of that data. And it's got access to Apollo, so it can go and do enrichment. It can go look at websites. So if you give it a LinkedIn profile, or it pulls a LinkedIn profile from HubSpot, it can go look somebody up in LinkedIn. And we have it connected to a bunch of other tools, for example, RFs and Notion, so it can do things for us in there. None of this is particularly rocket science, although the continuous evolution and optimization of this is interesting and challenging. So after a sales call, I take the meeting transcript from HubSpot, I drop it into Claude. I have in that project a conversation, a chat about each of our sales prospects. And I go, can you give me feedback on my performance in that call against our sales strategy? And Claude is pretty brutal about what you did this, you did that, you gave away some free consulting, you solved that problem on the call, you did a demo and you shouldn't, all this stuff, right? So give me all this. It puts short meeting notes into the transcript. It updates our MEDDPICC qualification scores, and it does a really good job of tracking that. And then it can draft replies and follow-ups and things like that. And it can go back into HubSpot and create and update deals. It can create and update and enrich contact information. So if someone turns up for a sales meeting that we weren't expecting, it can take their name, go find them, put them into HubSpot, connect them to the deal, all that sort of stuff. So all this sort of stuff that is good, solid housekeeping. But here's where this gets really valuable, because once you've done this for, typically a complicated consultancy sale engagement might be 3, 4, 5 conversations over a month or two. So it's got all of these transcripts in that conversation, and it can look back at, well, your MEDDPICC champion score was 1, but now I think it's 2 because this happened, and that sort of thing. And I'm getting old. I haven't got the greatest memory in the world, and Claude is giving me this really deep institutional memory of what happened with that conversation in the context of how we approach engagements with prospects. Blair Enns says that the sale is the sample, and the experience that people have with consultancy like businesses like ours should be representative of the kind of work that they do and the kind of people you're dealing with. And I think the really most interesting thing about all of this is this whole thing has allowed me to turn up to meetings really well briefed and really well prepared with really intelligent questions. And I'm interacting with Claude. I'm kind of going, I think I've got a hunch about this, and I think this, and blah, blah, blah. It's not just Claude automating it all for me. It's an engagement, a collaborative engagement. So I'm turning up really well prepared. And I'm talking to people and I'm listening because HubSpot's recording the meeting and I know it's going to catch everything. It's given me interesting things to say with some branches. If it goes down this rabbit hole, talk about this and so on. And I think I am much more present in my sales and client meetings than I have ever been. And actually, again, AI is helping me do my job better. It's making me be more human, or bring more of my experience, my expertise to the conversations, without worrying so much about the details of what did I say and what, where was, what didn't they say something about this? And then at the end of all of this, when we're thinking about the proposals, it can go, okay, well, don't forget in the third meeting, they really cared about this, so don't forget to put that in the proposal. And at the end of all of this, when we won a deal, it can produce a sales to studio handover document using our templates. Or just all this stuff is just so much better as a result of having all this context. Okay. The third thing that I wanted to sort of touch on, and I think this is also really interesting. We have a client who has a really, really technically complicated product, series of products. That's an engineering company, and they get semi-structured request for quote emails in from their resellers and from their direct customers, some of whom are, extraordinarily technically sophisticated companies. NASA, for example, right? So companies, organizations. So, they're getting asked this stuff. We need this thing, And our client has a really long, detailed rule book about how they quote, how they specify, how they respond to different kinds of requests and who gets to deal with them. They've got a pre-sales engineering consultancy team who different areas of expertise and experience. So email comes into the system, into HubSpot. It then gets passed with some context, and HubSpot goes and gets from GitHub a version controlled prompt that says, here is how you analyze this email, and this is the information we're trying to get out of it. So, what kind of thing are they looking for? How do we allocate it? Blah, 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 blah. And the prompt is really long because it's a distillation of their manual. And quite a lot of work went into doing that, and quite a lot of their expertise and sort of kind of knowledge engineering and stuff. So that lives in GitHub and gets updated, and as we learn how things work with this. And so the GitHub pull is an API call. It takes the latest version of the version control prompt. It takes the email, a little bit of context about who's sent the email, and it passes it into Claude using an API, and then analyzes that. Sometimes you can use these little workflow commands in HubSpot. If the prompt is less than 3,000 characters, you can use HubSpot's own built-in sort of API integrations, and it just does it. Problem with this was it just got too long, and also the version control on the prompt was really important because we needed to know how it was analyzing it and stuff. And this is embedded in a step in a workflow. So the outcome of that is it then creates a new deal, populates fields in the new deal, assigns that deal to the right person, sets various parameters, notifies people. So all the sort of business process workflow stuff that can happen in HubSpot is triggered off an email that is sort of semi-structured natural language. And against a semi-structured natural language manual about how to do it that distills quite a lot of experience. And then it also, what's interesting about this is it comes back with an AI level of confidence. So I'm pretty confident that this is right, or I'm very confident that I've analyzed this. So we can then pass that on to the pre-sales engineers. So this is a really interesting use case for AI embedded into business process. Okay, so you can see I'm quite geeky and excited about that. I built it, so my special thing. Okay, so let's look at some rules of the road about how to deploy AI into HubSpot. If you're not using a lot of AI right now, other than turning up to ChatGPT or Claude and just prompting stuff, or maybe you've got some skills or projects, some sort of level 1 AI usage. In HubSpot, we recommend pick a single annoying task, something that happens quite often, so that optimizing it has some sort of time value to justify the investment. And work through that. So things like account summaries, turning webinars into campaign assets, answering a single sort of common customer questions, or product information for a particular product on a chat. Avoid starting with something that is politically sensitive, data sensitive, privacy sensitive, poorly understood, not well documented or understood internally. Doesn't happen very often. This is for starting. As you progress, I think we recommend higher levels of ambition and bigger problems. But then measure the results, see how is it actually doing what you want. So this is sort of training the AI usage muscle, the AI fluency muscle a little bit. And also, I think testing AI functionality in HubSpot to make sure it's doing, it's not mis-automating and hallucinating and doing stupid things is really valuable. So having that feedback loop, that Gordon Ramsay at the pass experience, again, training the muscle before you accelerate. AI works best if the step, process, task is repeatable and the inputs are reasonably clear. Human judgment, experience, and expertise are more important where the situation is ambiguous, sensitive, complicated, commercially significant. And balancing those two things and getting that right is, I think, the biggest change management task with all of this. Gosh, I realize I'm rabbiting on and the time's flown. It's past. I will wrap this up. So you keep that judgment alive, keep your hands on the wheel. It's really important that every AI initiative has an accountable owner, that you run it as a portfolio of projects. There's a real danger, I think, in just giving AI tools to everyone and go, you'll go be an AI engineer. Just because everybody can use AI doesn't mean everybody should use AI. Sometimes it's better to take a little bit more of a software engineering, systems engineering approach and go, here is the tool we built for you. We'd love your feedback and your input, but we're doing it. You're not building it, right? Sometimes people should be building AI and they may be in the wrong job and you need to move them into the AI engineering space. But it's not a case of just give everyone access to Claude and jobs are good. HubSpot charges for some of its AI functionality. We have only got, I think, one client that is paying for extra HubSpot credits apart from Articulate. Most of them are not using any or very, very few on trials. You get typically 5,000 credits a month, and that is enough, for example, for 500 chats a month. It's enough for enriching a bunch of contacts. It's enough for it's quite a lot of stuff. So you can experiment quite freely without spending any more money, and HubSpot won't charge you without asking and checking and you actually giving active consent. So you can't accidentally spend your way into overspending with HubSpot credits. You do need to put some guardrails in once you start spending more money. And we've all read the horror stories about people sort of getting £100,000 bills for AI Claude AI API credits and things like that. So managing it in HubSpot is a lot easier, I think. Also, some of these tools require access to particular HubSpot editions, tiers, and hubs, and you need to check that you've got the right thing, and sometimes you may need to upgrade or change. But don't not do it because you're afraid of spending HubSpot credits. You've got enough HubSpot credits to run a really solid trial for free. Okay. Learning and iterating rapidly is really, really important as well. Obviously, I'm conscious of time. I'm going to wrap this up. So we have a webinar in a couple of weeks about lateral thinking and writing memorable website copy. So moving on to a completely different area of expertise, a very human area of expertise, copywriting. That's going to be delivered by my colleague, Joanna. I've got more webinars coming up over the next 2.5 months. So stay tuned, articulatemarketing.com webinars. And if any of this has resonated with you and you've stuck it out to 3 minutes past penalty shootout time, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I'd love to hear from you. Drop me an email, book a meeting. We can talk about anything that I've discussed here, your usage of HubSpot, or Jacques Dutronc if you prefer. Okay. And on that note, that is the end of this morning's session. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a fantastic day.